Hello. Hello. I wanted to do a writing stream. Well, not much of a live stream is it if there's no viewers, but the possibility that there could be someone watching, I hope, maybe, I can use as motivation to get back into writing once again. How loud does it want me to speak? How loud does it want me to speak on this thing? Like if I just speak like this, is it just too quiet? Can I have my normal speaking voice on? I haven't got too long. I've got a phone call at 6, which I need to take. So I'll stop when that phone call arrives. But until then, I have all the time in the world until 6 o'clock, which is 50 minutes. So I have 50 minutes, but also all the time in the world. So I wanted to... Ideally, I want to do my book. However, I also want to do short stories. And I feel like a short story would be more beneficial to get back into it rather than an entire book. Because books are big, if you hadn't noticed. Books can be a lot of words. And the draft of my book is currently sat at like 90-something thousand words, which is ain't a lot more than a short story. And so there was a story that I started writing a very long time ago and didn't get anywhere with it. This is it. This is the whole thing of what I wrote so far. And it is one of my stories based on the character of Ral in some world, some universe, some world, some planet, some existence that I made up. I think I started writing this in Sicily, didn't I? Was I in Sicily when I started writing this? And was that the last time I've written anything? Wow. Though I restarted on the draft recently. I say recently. That was a long time ago. that was months and months ago, I think. Is the music too loud? Can I turn it down a bit? Is that better? I don't know. I genuinely do not know. But hopefully one day I can find out. I've got a feeling I'm going to be on 0 viewers for the rest of my life. Which is alright. Because that's not everything. Do I like this song? Is there any other songs that might be better to have as a loop? Karma. Let's try that for this. Feels a bit more upbeat, doesn't it? Let's try this for a bit. So, this story, I kind of remember bits of it. I don't remember where it wanted to go, but I remember what it was. Oh. No, thank you. I don't want... No, thank you. No shouting in my ears, please. How about this one? Is this one good? Is this going to have voices? Is this going to have people speaking? I guess we'll find out. This is It's Just Another Day by Ron Galinas. Oh, there's someone speaking. Equatorial Run. They should all be royalty free, I hope. Which means I'm allowed to use them. I hope. I guess we'll find out. But I wanted to read this story. So, it is titled Lao Moa. What is this music going to do? Wow, this is feeling very tropical. Okay. Over the past few days, the temperature had continued to rise as Ral travelled further south. It had changed from pleasant to uncomfortable. The storm from the previous night left the morning air humid, and Ral had to wipe the sweat from his face. There was nothing more that he wanted than a bath when he arrived at the fishing village of Lao Moa. He soaked himself in the external tub at the local Menino and watched the morning's fishing boats return into the harbour. They docked onto the side of one of the many ramshackled wooden piers that stretched out into the bay. Olive-tanned men hoisted nets of fish from their little wide-beamed rowboats and carried them up to the morning fish market. The village had been built at the base of a steep hill that stretched down to the water and ended at a small golden sand beach. I feel like my tongue is a bit swollen at the moment. I bit my tongue quite badly, as in there was a lot of blood coming out of my tongue last night. I'm sure it's fine. The village had been built at the base of a steep hill that stretched down to the water and ended at a small golden sand beach. As the village grew, it had extended up the hillside, resulting in rows of cream and orange houses sprawling about the coastline. The Menino was a 3-story yellow building at the top of the village, just slightly off to the east side, teetering on the edge of a small cliff face, allowing breathtaking views of the village below, especially from the external tub that sat at the far side at the top of the cliff face. It had 12 rooms, a restaurant and a bar, but all Ral had wanted was the tub, especially after such a long journey. I feel like my ethider. With my do you make noises like that? Ah, oh, my tongue. Is it swollen? I feel like I'm biting it as I talk, which isn't ideal. My tongue is hitting the roof of my teeth as I speak. Have I got? Hold on. I'm gonna have a look at my tongue in the mirror. Is it swollen? How do I tell? Oh, that's... I think there's a bit of swelling around the wound of where I bit into my tongue last night. Oh well. I was just having a normal meal, and somehow... What was I even eating? Pizza. I had a pizza, and I managed to bite through the pizza and my tongue. He had travelled far from the north, from the city of Dornester in the Basque region of Kiel, down through the wildlands of Jorn and entering into the Majul Peninsula. Jorn, maybe? I'll call it Jorn. And entering into the Majul Peninsula, where the village of Laumoa sat at the southern tip. The capital of Majul was in the north of the country, and had stood undefeated for nearly 1,000 years, until recent history, where it had fallen under a great siege, and has since been captured by as many kingdoms as there are people in Laumoa claiming they still live under the Majulian royal family's rule, the last of which having been slain nearly 40 years ago. The much larger city of Seravi on the east coast of the peninsula had seen combat, but not Laumoa. They had continued on blissfully unaware, waving off all tales of their capital's falling as nothing more than rumours and hearsay. Ral had a purpose for making the long journey south. He had visited a travelling carnival group in Dornester. They had the usual assortment of attractions and displays, magic users of different elements performing cheap tricks, animals jumping through hoops and balancing balls on their heads, people and animals with unusual physical characteristics. But it was the last one that Ral had found the most interesting. There'd been a fish suspended in water stasis that he had never seen before. Okay, well, it sets up a place. Some of the language can be improved, I think. Some of the sentences can be improved. So what? But nothing has really started, has it, in this story? So I guess I need to come up with what I want to happen. So, what is this? I guess maybe just what is this story about? What is this story about? A weird fish. What's wrong with weird? Oh, E before I. A weird fish. Okay. A weird fish. Where do we go from here? A weird fish. where the fish had come from. So, what happens in the story? So, a fishing village. Oh! So, a fishing village. How do you spell village? With a V? Find a. I need to get better at touch typing. Can I try and type? Find a weird fish. One morning in their fishing nets. It is bought by someone that sells it to the circus. Okay. A fishing village finds a weird fish. Finds a weird fish one morning in their fishing nets. It is bought by someone that sells it to the circus. Raoul sees said fish and travels to where it was found. Okay. He identifies it as a threat to the village. Okay, so it gives some sort of suspense to the story, I guess. It's some sort of threat. He identifies it as a threat to the village. He resolves the threat. Right. Well, I mean, it has to have a conclusion, right? And in these stories, it's normally Raoul fixes the problem. So, what is the problem? Why is this fish a threat to the village? What would happen? Overpopulation? Question mark? Overpopulation of the fish? But then it wouldn't be rare anymore, it'd be common. If it just explodes out and just boom. Bum ba bum ba bum bum ba 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 bum ba bum bum. Do I do D&D on Friday? Do I do D&D on Friday? Don't want to rush through the rubble belt, and it means everything gets to see as much as it is, everyone gets to see as much of it as possible. Who's missing on Friday? There's no Arthur. Okay, well, let's leave it at that. Overpopulation of the fish? Poisonous fish. Ooh, if the fish are poisonous, that could be interesting. But I feel like it... Is there nothing that's a bit more magical. Fish are... Because you know like how sometimes you get fish that swim alongside bigger fish? Was it like there's those fish that swim along sharks? Or there's fish that swim along whales? What if these are fish that swim along something that is much bigger and much more dangerous? Companion fish of something more dangerous. Okay. So what is the problem? Where did the fish come from? A weird fish, where the fish had come from. Where has the fish come from? I don't know. A cave. A cave that has recently, that a recent earthquake opened. Oh, okay, so it's ancient fish that have come from a cave. Okay. I like this. Something much more dangerous. It is still dormant within the cave. What is the solution? Kill the creature? Seal up the cave again? I guess those are the two options, right? If it wakes up, it could destroy the village. Okay, if it wakes up, it could destroy the village, which we don't want to happen, of course. So maybe... So, what if we... What if this is a... It wakes up, it could destroy the village. The locals learn of the creature. They want to kill it. Ral wants to save it. What about that? So it pits Ral against the local people. So if Ral wants to save it, is this one song looping? It is, okay. Equatorial Run, this is a nice song, I like this. Ral wants to save it. Locals learn of the creature, they want to kill it. Ral wants to save it. So maybe it's not... Ral recognizes the fish and knows what it usually coexists with. So this is something from ancient times. This is something from before the fall of magic, etc, etc, etc. This is something that shouldn't exist in the current world. This is something from the previous world. And as such, it is a danger. Okay, so plot points. Ral travels to the village. Ral identifies cave where fish came from. Ral discovers a dormant creature that could destroy the village. Villagers learn of the creature and want to kill it. Ral wants to seal the cave up again. Okay. Wow, something just went very loud just then. What was that? Something just seemed to go very loud indeed. Okay. Well, that gives me a lot of direction, doesn't it? So let's go. We don't need all this anymore. We got our plot points. And then once we've done this, we'll decide how it ends. So over the past few days, don't need that. The temperature had continued to rise as Ral travelled south. Continued to rise. It had changed as Ral travelled south, changing from pleasant to uncomfortable. The storm from the previous night left the morning air humid, and Ral wiped the sweat from his face. So it becomes present tense. The storm from the previous night left the morning air humid, and Ral wiped the sweat. And Ral wiped the sweat from his face. There was nothing more that he wanted than a bath when he arrived at the fishing village of Laumoa. He soaks himself. There was nothing more that he wanted than a bath when he arrived at the fishing village of Laumoa. He soaked himself in the external tub at the local menino and watched the morning's fishing boats return into the harbour. They docked onto the sides of the sides. Maybe I should describe the boats. The small rowboats docked onto the sides of the many ramshackled wooden piers that stretched out into the bay. Olive-tanned men hoisted nets filled with fish. Oh, I guess I've described them here, from their little wide-beamed rowboats. And watched the morning's fishing boats return into the harbour. The boats docked onto the side of the many ramshackled wooden piers that stretched out into the bay. Olive-tanned men hoisted nets filled with fish from their little wide-beamed rowboats. Go on. And carried them up to the morning fish market. The village had been built at the base of a steep hill that stretched down to the water and ended at a small golden sand beach. As the village grew, it had extended up the hillside, resulting in rows of colourful houses. Sprawled sprawled above the coastline. Sprawled above the coastline. The Menino was a 3-story yellow building at the top of the village, sitting just slightly to the east. Sitting to the eastern side and teetering. Sitting to the eastern side and teetering on the edge of a small cliff face. This isn't needed. Allowing breathtaking views of it. That's not needed. Can I be like, ignore all? There we go. The Menino was a 3-story yellow building at the top of the village, sitting to the eastern side and teetering on the edge of a small cliff face. The external tub sat at the far side at the top. So I guess this place doesn't have much concern of nudity then, if it can see an external bathtub. Or maybe it's a maybe it's like a natural spring type situation. Maybe it's a river. Ooh, there's like a river basin that is really nice. Tub. Don't think tub is the right word, is it? Would it be a better word for tub? The external bath. He soaked himself in the external bath. There was nothing more that he wanted than to relax. He soaked himself in the external bath at the local Menino and watched the morning's fishing boats return into the harbour. The external bath was a large basin built into the cliff face. The external bath was a large basin built into the cliff face. Heated. What could it be heated by? Heated by a boiler system. Heated by some sort of boiler, so like cold water comes out, gets heated by the boiler. That's heated by a boiler system that flowed hot water into the bath. Heated by a boiler system that flowed hot water into the bath. The Menino had 12 rooms, a restaurant and a bar. And a place to eat. I think it'd be better than saying a restaurant. Because a restaurant feels too modern, doesn't it? And a place to eat. The Menino had 12 rooms and a place to eat, but all Rel had wanted was the bath. So could that be a new paragraph? A new paragraph. A new paragraph. I don't know. Is that good? Is that good to have a new paragraph there? Maybe. He had travelled far from the north, from the city of Dornester in the Basque region of Kiel, down through the wildlands of Yorn and entering in the Majul Peninsula where the village of Lamoa sat at the southern tip. The capital of Majul was in the north of the country and had stood undefeated for nearly 1,000 years. Where it had fallen. The capital of Majul was in the northern country and had stood undefeated for nearly 1,000 years. Until recent history where it had fallen under a great siege and had since been captured by as many kingdoms as there were people in Lamoa, claiming they still lived under the Majulian royal family's rule. That's such a long sentence. Is that one sentence? Sentence. That's one sentence. It wasn't until recent history when it had fallen. It wasn't until recent history when a siege. It wasn't until recent history. The capital of Majul was in the north of the country and had stood undefeated for nearly 1,000 years. It wasn't until recent history when it had fallen. It wasn't until recent history when it had fallen from a nearby country, when it had fallen. It wasn't until it had fallen, because if I say it had fallen under siege, just makes it sound like it's come under siege, not that it had fallen because of the siege. Does that make sense? It had fallen under siege. And the whole of edit this. I said the wrong date. Going ahead with D&D tonight. Still. It wasn't until recent history when it had fallen. When it had fallen due to a great siege from a neighbouring country. Since then, it had been captured. Since then, which is two words. Since then, it had been captured by as many kingdoms as there are people in Lamoa, claiming they still live under Majulian royal family's rule. The last. A bloodline which had been ended, the last of which having been slain. The last of which having been slain? Since then, it had been captured. Since then, it had been captured. It had. Since then, oh my god. Since then, it had been captured by as many kingdoms as there are people in Lamoa, claiming they still live under the Majulian royal family's rule. The last of which having been slain nearly 40 years ago. That sounds like maybe the people could have been slain. A bloodline which was ended. No, this... I don't like this, because this just makes them sound so dumb. So claiming they still live under the Majulian kingdom. Since then, it had been captured by as many kingdoms as there are people in Lamoa, claiming they still live under Majulian rule. The capital of Majul was in the north of the country and had stood undefeated for nearly 1,000 years. Does that make sense? I'm not liking this sentence. Since then, it had been captured. Since then, it had been captured and recaptured. As many times. Since then, it had been captured and recaptured. Since then, it had been captured and recaptured as many times as there were people in Lamoa. Claiming how do I word this so it basically makes it so that the locals are just blissfully unaware of the events that happen outside, and they still claim to be from the previous kingdom. We captured as many times as the people in Lamoa claiming that the city had never fallen. Is that good? Since then, it had been captured and recaptured as many times as there are people in Lamoa claiming the city had never fallen. The much larger city of Serevi on the east coast of the peninsula had seen combat, but not Lamoa. They had continued on blissfully unaware, waving of all tales of the capital's falling as nothing more than rumours and hearsay. Ral had a purpose for making the long journey south. He had visited a travelling carnival group in Dornester. They had the usual assortment. And Shawmaster. Visit travelling, and there he had seen a fish. He had visited a travelling carnival group in Dornester, and there he had seen a fish. He had visited a travelling carnival. He had visited a travelling carnival group in Dornester, and there he had seen the usual assortment of Oh, I will get better at typing. Because I'm trying to type without looking at the keyboard. And they had seen the usual assortment of attractions. Casters of cheap magical tricks. Casters of cheap magical tricks. Acts of incredible strength. Casters of magical tricks. Acts of incredible strength and agility. Agility, okay, thank you. Thank you. Actually, I managed to figure out what I was trying to say. Casters of magic tricks. Acts of incredible strength and agility. And what Ral had come to see. Unusual creatures. Many had all were creatures of no remark. All were creatures of no remark. A bullhorn. A bullhorn from the sail wastes. A bullhorn from the sail wastes. A churmic. A churmic from the from the Filgurn jungle. A bullhorn from the sail wastes. A churmic from the Filgurn jungle. All were unremarkable except one. A fish had been suspended in water, kept alive by a magical seal. Oh, that type of seal. Clapping with it, no. How are they? A fish had been suspended in water. A fish had been trapped. Trapped in a small glass tank. Kept alive on a diet of insects. A fish had been trapped in a small glass tank, kept alive on a diet of insects. A fish there we go, a fish which should no longer exist. Val had a purpose for making the long journey south. Excuse me. Ral had a purpose for making the long journey south. He had visited a travelling carnival group in Dornester, and there he had seen the unusual assortments of attractions, casters of magical tricks, acts of incredible strength and bravery. And what Ral had come to see, unusual creatures. Do I like that? I don't like this sentence. What Ral What had caught Val's attention was the bestiary. No, a bestiary is a collection of books. It was the zoo collection. Do I? Because this... So, ages ago, zoos would be cruel. Much, much more cruel than they are now. Especially a animal collection in a circus. They'll be kept in cages, small cages. Was the animal collection. How do I make it so this doesn't just seem overly cruel? All creatures of no remark, a bullhorn from the Sale wastes, a churmuk from the Filgern jungle. All were unremarkable, except one. A fish had been trapped in a small glass tank, kept alive on a diet of insects. A fish which should no longer exist. Does this just sound cruel? He inquired, but where the creature? These are description. It was long and slender. With 3 fins. Set around its torso in a triangular shape. Its blue scales shimmered with a green hue as the light in the tank, as it shimmered with a green hue as it moved. Artificial lights. It was long and slender, with 3 fins set around its torso in a triangular shape. Its blue scale shimmered with a green hue as it moved under the artificial lights in its tank. There's no it is. There's no apostrophe. It's in its tank. Its head was narrow, and its mouth opened, and its mouth was long, slim, opened to reveal sharp teeth. Its head was narrow, and it was long and slim, that opened. Its head was narrow. Its head was narrow, long, and slim. And it opened to reveal a row of sharp teeth. He had inquired about where the fish had been discovered. Do I have Braille comment on the conditions of these animals? Maybe they're dead and their bodies are just kept from rotting and through magic are made to move. A fish had been trapped. A fish swam. A fish swam in a small glass tank. Long since dead, like all the other animals here. Made to move through magic. Long since dead, like all the animals here, but preserved and made to move through magic. It was a fish. A fish swam in a small glass tank, long since dead like all the other animals here, but preserved and made to move through magic. It was a fish which should longer. It was a creature. It was a creature which should no longer exist. It was long and slender. The fish was long and slender. The fish was long and slender, with 3 fins set around its torso in a triangular shape. Its blue scales shimmered with the green hue as it moved under the artificial lights in its tank. Its head was narrow, long and slim, and opened to reveal a row of sharp teeth. It inquired about where the fish had been discovered. The animal master directed him to a small town. The animal master had directed him to a small fishing village on the southern tip of the what was it called? Magellan Peninsula. Magellan Peninsula. He had inquired about where the fish had been discovered. The animal master directed him to a small fishing village on the southern tip of the Magellan. The next morning, headed down Raoul headed down into the village. Maybe it had a handful of rooms. The Menina had a handful of rooms and a place to eat, but all Raoul had wanted was the bath. The next morning, Raoul headed down into the... Oh, it's 6. I gotta go. Okay, it's been a start. It's definitely been a start, and I have direction of where to go with this story. And oh boy, do I want to finish it. Until I do another story. We'll see. We'll see when I next do this. But from me to myself, because there's no one else,